Okay, hello and good morning. We are playing When Stars Collide today. This is not my usual day for streaming, but the new episode was released and I didn't want to wait until tomorrow because tomorrow I'm starting Cataclysm and Cataclysm Classic and I don't want to skip that either. Oh, a gremlin beat me here. So, we're gonna go ahead and stream today because I'm actually able to get up earlier than I usually do on Wednesdays. Because usually I work Tuesday nights, but I got off work early. So I'm awake now. What are you talking about? Who is this gremlin? So this is the next episode of When Stars Collide, which will be chapter 5, and it's only chapter 5 because it's a big one. According to the dev, it's over. I have that post up. There we go. It's over 60,000 words just in this episode, just in chapter 5. So it's going to be a lot. So this is also the chapter where we lock in the romance. I almost forgot my notes. 60K. I have inside information. LOL. Yes, you do. Okay. Trying to get organized here. I've been up for less than an hour, so forgive me. So, here we go. Scars of all divine. Here we go. Ooh, look at these jackets. Spiffy. I think we saw them wearing these in the prologue. It's been a while since I played the prologue. After I didn't need to play the prologue anymore, I tended to skip it because I wanted to get into the actual game itself. But even we're wearing a jacket. That's nice and spiffy. At this point, we've identified 30 data prisms with navigational charts and surveys. We've been working to integrate them with the Ophelia to start organizing them properly. So I'm going to check the affinity. Cav is just barely beating out Asher. Just barely. That's good, because I want to romance Cav. And how's that going? Slow. The amount of data on some of those prisms is astronomical. We've transferred a grand total of 2. Then we had to run them against our existing charts as a point of reference. We've identified one sector, but several more seem to be entirely unexplored regions. Okay. My stream manager is not... Your end looks high enough you could probably get on his route too. Interesting. My stream manager is not caught up with the actual game. Still stuck on the main menu. Finished Asher route so far. Was gonna play more, but my stomach hurts at the moment. Aw, I hope you feel better. Trying to figure out why it's not showing. Okay. There we go. The translation of the Valayan dialect is a little slow too. Even with our ship's translator and Lane giving us a foundation to work with, it's a struggle. I know she said it was a complex language, but I wasn't quite expecting it to be this bad. Numbers, coordinates, measurements, those things have been easy enough, but a whole bunch of reports. Well, we're still working on it. Once the translator gets a handle on the grammar, though, it'll be much faster. I'm gonna do Dad's route next, probably tomorrow. Well, I'm hoping to get on Cav's route. Glad to hear you're making progress on it. Seems like there's several more weeks of work here, though. At least. Lane's also reconfigured a couple of the medical instruments you brought in, including a very efficient subdermal regeneration tool. And a medical scanner that puts everything we use right to shape. So far they are impressive, to say the least. We've finished cataloging the Valayan items and have moved a few more to secure storage. He pushed the slammed data pad across the table to Noel. This is everything we've identified, what it does, and some basics of safe operation. Even for the non-modified ones, Lane wanted to make sure the teams at R&J didn't, hurt themselves trying to figure it out. Well, looks like you've all been working hard. I still can't fathom what my father intended by all of this. I'm more surprised there actually was a toaster. You found a toaster? It's not... Okay, in fairness, it's not a toaster specifically, but also, yes, kind of. This report is going to be an interesting read at the very least. Anything else before we move on to today's surface mission? Gates? Anything from the Tachyon Bacon or other comm channels? Well, they did have another PAR gate closure, not out here though. It was over in PARS 5, but I had to update all the systems. Alright, not surprised. There's been an outbreak of them the last few years, so I guess it's not over yet. Bread. Or maybe that's supposed to be toast. Yeah, not in our neck of the woods this time at least. Anything else? Nothing on the beacon. They pretty much don't send anything outside of gate closures or major events. Any other channels saying anything we should know about? Everything else was on the dark channels. Lots of talk about raider activity in the inflows, but we won't know how accurate any of that is until we're closer in and can verify it on official channels. Supposed to have a glossary article for PARS 5 that I forgot to add. Whoops! Well, something else to do. Same with all the other rumors. There was something going around about ISIS 3 being destroyed. What's ISIS 3? Sounds like a space station? Yeah, not out here though. That's out in PARS 4. Anything on how that happened? Well, the rumor goes it was destroyed by some outside force, but again, we won't know more until we get in closer and can verify it with an official channel. Another notice for ID-73 and to be wary of a ship matching that description. And before you ask, it's some ship that supposedly has been seen lurking around deep space for the past few years. Or ships. No one knows who they are, but of course rumor has it they're some unfriendly Type 3 or Type 4 species. Mind you, no one has ever had a decent visual on them. It's all blurry images and vague scanner readings. Oh, the kind of an extension of the whole Bigfoot phenomenon. The dark channels may be full of stuff like that, but it's not always bad to monitor it, Rafe. You never know what might turn out to be real. Not out here. Oh, funny coincidence. I heard scions come up on one channel. It's been a while. Please, scions come up all the time on the dark channels. Oh, Cap is actually at this meeting. Space cryptids. Yes, thank you. That's the word I was thinking of. 1 second. Sorry about that. My cat wanted in and then decided she didn't want in. I would rather play with the other cat. Scions come up all the time on the dark channels. Not all the time. I guess someone else is gathering up a team to look for the Lishepa's circle. Someone claimed to have a new lead. Everyone looked at me, but I shrugged. I have no idea what that is. They don't either, trust me. It's come up now and again. No one knows if it's a location or an object. It might be a star system. Some think it's a Valayan star system, actually. Others think it's the location of the key to get into Valayan space. Or the location of the key to get some kind of store of arcane knowledge. Like some hidden dark world with boxes of Valayan data prisms? Do you want to join up and find out? No, thank you. I think I'm good. It's just funny to see the topic come up now of all times. Before, I didn't pay much attention, but now, you know. Well, it has nothing to do with us. Any of us. If that's all, we can focus on the more pressing matter at hand. P3575. Ah, yes, I'm rather partial. Astria Porta, Chevron 7 locked. Yes, I'm rather partial to P3575. What about it? As you all know, we've been down to the surface several times over the last 72 hours and have taken more scans than the space labs know what to do with. And picked up quite a lot of samples. We found evidence of umbridium deposits in the largest continent, something the mining guild is going to be interested in. And Uran, you found something interesting on your last trip too? Well, a plant I discovered in the rainforest we stopped by. It has a chemical component very similar to a substance used to treat Fearon syndrome. It's a compound notoriously difficult to synthesize. So finding any natural sources of it is significant. Obviously more testing will be needed, but it's of definite interest. You know, it's kind of funny that this has come up, that there's an item on this planet that has medical significance, because my brother introduced me to a website called the Chakat's Den. This was long before AO3 was a thing. And one of the plot points is that there is a planet that's rich in that kind of plant life. And there's basically a guerrilla war going on regarding it because the pharmaceutical companies don't want to share. So, yeah. There's a war. It's not an outright war, but it's definitely, there's definitely fighting over it. Did we figure out what happened to the original inhabitants yet? Well, Daz and I have some working theories. Not much is left of them anywhere, unfortunately, so there's a lot of gaps in the story. We've determined it was an industrialized world, given the presence of iron in what remains of major cities. They seem to be on the track to becoming spacefaring, but weren't there yet. They appear to have made it to both of their moons, though we don't know how much further into the planetary system they got. We found evidence of what might have been a nuclear-based confrontation, a war. Though much of the fallout has dissipated by now, the level of radioactivity in some areas is still substantially higher than normal. Not too dangerous levels anymore, but enough for us to know something happened. That said, a nuclear war doesn't necessarily align with an extinction event. Though we found evidence something happened, the scale of it seems too small to have been responsible for wiping them out. With just the tools of neophilia, we can't say for sure. All we can say is that something happened at least a few centuries ago. We're still not certain what. It's been long enough, the planet has started to recover at any rate. At least it's not a big cataclysm. I hate those. You always feel like maybe you could have helped if you found it a little sooner, especially if there are survivors. Still thinking about JMB 2038? I had nightmares about that place for months. Aww. Sweetheart. Oh, I like this view of the jacket. Nice. Nice. So, which one? Do I want to know? Zombie apocalypse. Sometimes the apocalypse happens on someone else's planet. It was a biological containment situation, a virus of some sort. It would rapidly kill the victims but take over the nervous system. The corpses would continue to move for days or even weeks in some cases. They weren't alive, had no reasoning or self-awareness, but they were able to move around on instinct. Zombies. Got it. It was pretty horrifying. By the time we found it, the uninfected survivors numbered in the double digits. Oh, ooh. I could see how that would be nightmare-inducing. Were you able to save anyone? Not many, unfortunately. We're one ship and it's difficult to get to the survivors. We got a few off the world. Just a few. Well, it doesn't matter much anyway. We're not dealing with anything like that this time around. For most of us, this last surface trip is going to be extremely routine. What's the plan today? About half the crew will be surface side for a few hours checking out various sites. We'll be wrapping up our survey of P3575 with this trip, and we'll be moving on to survey the rest of the system, so we want to make the most of it. We'll lurk around for a few more days and then head in. We have a couple of weeks of travel ahead of us. We have one stop at either station before some time in the inflows. Space dock is maybe a week away after that. This will be the last time on planet side until we get home, so I want everyone who hasn't been down yet to do so. Babe, that includes you. Yes, I know. Lane, you decide who you'll be tagging along with yet? Okay. I wonder who I'm gonna pick. Seem very undecided. Seems like a hard choice. I'm actually pretty good at, once I've decided on a route, I don't deviate from that. Other players have trouble not playing certain routes, but I guess it's because I'm ace, so I don't have that connection. Or maybe it's because I'm arrow, one of those. I'm able to specifically choose different routes. About that. I offered to go with her and show her the ropes. Glance towards the door where he's lounging against the frame in typical cab fashion. Of course, he's not actually sitting at the table. 1 second. This time it was the other cat that was flying at the door. You're going on a surface survey? Save the surprise, Noel. I drag myself out of the lab sometimes, you know. If it's just surveys and scans, I'm more than equipped to show her how we do things. If you go down, for the love of all that's holy, please put on some proper shoes. What? He can't wear his sandals? Cat glanced down at the thongs he was wearing and let out a sigh. Fine, I'll put some boots on. Well, I guess that solves that problem then. He shot Cab another curious look, and I got the feeling Cab must not go on surveys like this, no matter what he said. But he was the one who offered to go with me, not the other way around. Maybe after our last talk, he was just interested in getting to know me more. I wasn't sure. But I had to admit it had me more interested in him, so I wasn't inclined to reject the offer. Okay, with that settled, I guess we'll break the meeting here and everyone can get ready to head down. We'll be taking 2 shuttles. Group up and get ready. And Lane, it might be a good time to get you checked out on piloting one of these things. The shuttles? I mean, I don't mind, but is this a good time to tell you I've been called a bit of a daredevil pilot? Oh god, just what we need. Enough lunatic who doesn't know how to fly. Well, we could survive your piloting, so I think Lane's going to be fine. Oh, really? Let's go, everyone. And with that, the meeting ended and we went to get ready, as Noel said. As you can see, it's not exactly the most riveting job, but we followed the Exploration Guild's guides for necessary information so our reports meet their standard. So I'm going to save here because I have a feeling this is going to be one of those things where I'm going to want to return. There is interested in useful data for future expeditions as general information about the planet. That's why Noel wanted to get water table scans so they know where to set up a future base camp. That makes sense. It's the same as it used to be, I guess. We've been walking for a while, taking scans with a handheld device or pausing to set up a tripod so we could hold the scanner steady while we took a longer look underground. Things like subsurface water sources and general topology were at the top of the list, but we were also logging all scans of wildlife and plant life. People are still expanding into unfamiliar territory and asking the same questions when they do. I reckon it'll be like that until there's nowhere to expand into. Then, of course, we'll just find new places, as we always do. The universe is a big place, so that seems at least a few years away. Just a few. The sarcasm, I love it. I was a little surprised Cav appeared to be taking the survey seriously, though maybe I shouldn't be. At a glance, he came across as someone who didn't work hard, but I'd already figured out that first impressions were not always accurate with him. For sure. Beyond the teasing, there was a more serious man in there, one that was a scientist, even if he did prefer to be an errand boy for the researchers in the labs. Sometimes it felt like he lacked the curiosity and drive for exploration I would expect on a ship like the Ophelia, and he was the one who volunteered to come here with me. I got a sense it wasn't the planet he wanted to observe, though, and that made me curious. Why was he becoming interested in me when he seemed anything but when we first met? Cast a sidelong look his way as we walked. As expected, I'm not seeing anything strange on the scans. No unusual energy fields, no geological traces of catastrophe. I'm not even picking up any significant traces of iron or anything that might indicate this was once a city. You have to wonder what happened to them, and if they knew it was coming. I paused and glanced across the horizon thoughtfully. You'd think a cataclysmic extinction event would have left behind some kind of traces, something that wouldn't have faded, even by now. Could have been wiped out by a plague. That's a cataclysm that wouldn't leave behind anything your scans could pick up anymore. That's true, I suppose. A slow-moving event like that seems sad to think about, though. A little. You imagine how long they went about their lives as their own extinction chased them, trying to eke out happiness from the chaos, hide their heads and pretend it wasn't happening. Or how they just tried to live each day and make it through to the next. It's depressing as hell. I was thinking about those stones we saw earlier. That group of them standing in the circle? Oh, Stonehenge! They are the only stones of note that we've seen. I don't know, I've seen a few pretty rocks I thought about collecting for Noel. Oh, do you often give the captain offerings of pretty rocks? Not often, but it's pretty funny to do it and watch his face. If it's an interesting enough one, he actually gets excited, like a little bird who found a shiny object. He's been like that ever since I've known him. I'll have to keep that in mind if I ever need to appease him with an offering of some sort. Not sure we can haul one of those standing stones back for him, though. The stones I've been referring to were some we'd come across right after we started, a rough circular arrangement of large perpendicular stones. Oh, interesting. Both of us have seen similar arrangements on other worlds, megalithic structures left by people lost to history. Many of the stones this time had spiral carvings in them, strange elongated faces and angular symbols worn away from time and exposure. Others had various animals and other creatures, possibly building hints to what the people here have been like. My scans have revealed them to be over 12,000 years old. Pretty ironic that what's left of their civilization is some stones of primitive culture left behind. Those people had been gone even before the modern civilization on this planet was born, much less began to thrive. And yet whatever advancements they made are all but lost, nothing more than a few elevated elements in the atmosphere, or some artificial structures on their moon. Yet those rocks, put there by a culture they may not have even remembered, are still standing there as a memorial to them all. Spam. Amazing. At least something remains. At least there's a memorial of some kind. Exactly enough to make two overly analytical explorers take deep thoughts about how long they held on before they became echoes. Maybe we're being overly analytical because we know all any of us can do is hold on until we become echoes, or ghosts. I hope we aren't on a similar trajectory, spiraling towards our doom until all that's left of us someday is another dusty echo in the void. Yeah, something like that. Terrible to think that someday we'll fade like the rest of the echoes. Or be doomed to whisper about things that once were like the rest of the ghosts. Ghosts are just echoes too, after all. You know, I kind of have been under the impression you were supposed to be the chill one on the crew, but look at this conversation we're having. I don't know where you got that idea. I mean, you tend to casually joke around a lot. Not about the things that matter. I guess I still haven't gotten to know you well enough to see that just yet. Well, now you know. This had not been the conversation I was expecting when we came here together. I glanced down at the scanner in my hand, noting the slight slope downward in one direction. I started following that, and Cav picked his way behind me. What I really wonder is what they did to themselves, though. I guess we may never have the answer to that. What makes you think they killed themselves off? Oh, I don't know. I guess that's the usual assumption, isn't it? Just an assumption. We don't know what powers may have swooped from the heavens and destroyed them bit by bit while they were powerless to stop it. We don't know how hard they may have tried to save themselves. You can't condemn a race that's barely even a whisper anymore just because it's the usual assumption. There we go. Right. And there he went again, turning serious over something that seemed so trivial, setting aside the jokes and flippant banter to lecture me on something small. Were you a teacher at some point in your past? Kaz's eyes went wide, and for just a split second I thought I was right. But then he let out a surprisingly loud laugh, tipping his head back like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. What in the world makes you ask me that, Ale dear? You like to lecture people and teach them life lessons, unless you just do it to me. Maybe you're the only one I know that seems to need it. I think I've lived long enough to not need constant life lessons, no more than the others. You've existed. It remains to be seen how much you really lived. That was a very teacher-like thing to say, just so you know, though some might say it was pretentious. Were you aware that you rely so much on being able to look at someone and read their every intention that you judge people a little harshly when you can't see behind the veil? I never thought about it, but I can admit I'm not used to having to give people the benefit of the doubt. Well, aren't you glad you met me then? Get to learn a new skill and everything. That hasn't been my favorite thing about getting to know you, for the record. Maybe an unexpected bonus. Gave me a surprised look, and I smirked as I passed him by. If you want to talk about the unexpected, I didn't expect you to talk about ghosts like they're real. Oh, not a... Sorry, Twitch just suddenly shut down on my computer, my tablet. I guess it depends on what you mean when you say ghost. If it's just a visible remnant of the past, I guess half the stars we see at any time are ghosts too. Exactly. With the right level of perception, you can still see the world lines traced by objects around you. And sometimes you can catch glimpses of the ones they might have traced if they continued on certain trajectories. I'm not good at looking ahead, and I try not to. But for certain types of people, the curtain shrouding the future is moved aside whether or not you want to look. And as you walk forward, you can't help but see it out of the corner of your eye. You see memories of what was and memories of what could have been. That's all a ghost really is. Some would say you can't have a memory of what could have been because that defeats the purpose of being a memory. And some would reply something about physics, superpositions, and the way that quantum mechanics suggests what was, what is, and what might be are all concurrent anyway. Which means memory should apply to any of them. Quantum mechanics meddling everything and destroying dictionaries since the dawn of time. Not that time ever dawned, of course. Or exists, except when it's convenient as a subjective unit of measurement, according to physicists. And you, when you're trying to give people a hard time, if I recall. Not that it works on you, supposedly. This is why I stay in the lab recording growth patterns of weird plants and whatever else they want me to do. The moment you step outside, you have to contend with all the weird shit physicists say to keep us up at night, contemplating our existence. I don't think you have to contend with it. Pretty sure Asher has never kept up at night contemplating the fact that time is just a construct. I like to think I'm a little more complex than Asher. What's that mean, Ildir? I'm trying to imply something? I would never. Anyway, we should keep heading in this direction, following the slope. That should lead us to a low point where we can get a decent scan of any underground water sources. No one wanted to make sure we checked that before we left this area. Sure thing. He followed behind me, still carrying the tripod without complaint. We picked our way down a faint trail that looked like it had been worn down by larger animals of some kind, though we hadn't seen or heard anything big, so far anyway. I wondered if there was a water source nearby that caused so much traffic this way, or maybe it was just a through path for something else. Would have been interesting to see what made these trails, but we hadn't seen anything larger than an insect so far, and some birds from a distance. We should hurry it up. Looks like the weather's going to turn soon. I bet Noel calls us back to the shuttle within the hour. This shouldn't take long. We can head back after this scan. Sounds good. The moss was forming a thick carpet as we navigated over fallen logs and stones. It made me think this area probably got a lot of rain in general. I'd wager the current weather was pretty standard. That might pose a hurdle for future expeditions, if there were any. Cab and I stopped at the base of a shallow gully that seemed like it was the lowest area around. The ground's spongy here, but we can try to set up the tripod and let it do a scan. It should only take a few minutes. With a nod, Cab handed me the tripod he'd been carrying so I could set up a steady base for the scanner. For a moment, I tuned him out and just focused on what I was doing. It didn't take long to get everything set up and the scan running. Eased away from it, trying to not disturb the tripod as I went. Cab, I realized, had flopped onto a nearby log covered in a thick bed of moss. He was straddling it and looking up at the swirling clouds heading our way. It was definitely getting dark faster now. There was no way to avoid getting caught in rain, most likely. At this point, it was a question of whether it would be before or after we started back. I guess this is less depressing than the ship corridor, huh? At least there's more to look at. The only reason I offered to come down with you. Sure. It wasn't just that you wanted to spend time with my delightful self. I see. I will try not to be offended. I'm still working out whether you're delightful at all. Same, honestly. Remarks like that aren't working in your favor. If you can be a contrarian, so can I. No, that position on the crew is already taken and I am nowhere near retirement yet. I laughed a little, and as I joined him, we were both silent as we waited for the scan to finish. I would have been content to sit there in the gentle silence, listening to the still fall over things as the rain approached, but Cap abruptly cleared his throat. The gravelly, whining noise from his voice enhancers caused me to look his way. He twisted around the log and was watching me with interest. Well, I was just wondering. I mean, since I have you here, and since I haven't asked about it yet. My brows drew together as he seemed to stumble over his words in a way that was so uncharacteristically hesitant for him. What was Valleja like when you were there? He shot me a grin again, but it felt like a thin mask over the unexplained awkwardness. I'm curious about you space wizard types. Interested in space wizards or just in me? Was he so unused to showing genuine interest in something that he got flustered when he did? How cute. Maybe a little bit in you, yeah. Space wizards too, though. He leaned back towards me a bit, resting one forearm on his knee so he could hear my quiet voice. What was Valleja like? I guess that, at a glance, it was beautiful, pristine, as you'd expect. White and silver cities in the populated areas with perfectly manicured gardens and parks beneath endless violet skies. Desolate coastal areas protected from development. You could look out across crystal seas with perfect geoengineering to make them calm and smooth as glass. Beautiful forests where everything existed in a delicate balance. It's just like this serene utopia, everything ordered, measured, and controlled. I looked down at my hands, idly running my thumb over a minor cut I'd acquired while cataloging the delay and cargo. And in a lot of ways it was bleak and hollow and lonely. By the time I was there, the population was dwindling because so many of them had already left. But I doubt it's fully abandoned even now. I can't say how few people remain. It would be nice if a little disorder had made its way back in. Life isn't meant to be engineered like that. It should be chaotic and unpredictable. The tide should sometimes tear at the sand, not gently lap at it without displacing a single grain. Beautiful as it was, I felt so out of place there. A displaced grain of sand? Yeah, exactly like that. No matter how much my father tried to clean me up, make me fall in line and integrate, turn me into a proper Valayan, it took very little time for me to figure out why my mother never wanted to be there, why my grandfather had left and found happiness with someone else far away. That's why I didn't stay long, or tried not to anyway. You kind of lose your sense of time there. I don't know how long I was on the homeworld, but I managed to make my way back to the rest of the galaxy and leave it behind. You fit much better out here. I'm glad you left. Can't imagine you walking around in those hallowed halls without causing trouble. Though maybe it would have done them some good to have a few troublemakers roaming around. I don't know. The kind of troublemakers Valea seems to produce might not be good for the rest of the galaxy. Yeah, ain't that the truth? Before I left, I stayed on Raymir for a little while, which is a colony on one of the far edges of Valayan space. It was quite different. Much more alive, much less cultivated. So I imagine a lot of Valayan worlds aren't quite like the home world. What would be best is to just see more of that filter back, you know? He opened his mouth to reply, but was cut off by a sudden large gust of wind and a sharp temperature drop. He looked up and realized the front line of those dark clouds was already passing overhead. Oh boy. I lifted a hand to shield my eyes as another violent gust whipped through. Cav heard the rain before I did and was on his feet before I'd even realized we were about to get drenched. He darted out and snatched up the scanner, scooping it into his arms as he glanced around for what I assumed was shelter. I was right behind him as he darted to a large nearby tree, but we weren't fast enough. Clouds burst open, dumping the heavens on us. The tree was only a few meters away, but by the time we staggered under its branches, we were both dripping and soaked through. And laughing. I wiped water from my face, staring out in amazement. How the sky could release so much at once was incredible. The tree provided only minimal shelter. Rain dripped through the leaves, and every time the wind gusted through, it sent another shower of freezing droplets down to us. The cool air raised goosebumps on my arms, but I didn't hate it. It had been years since I'd been caught out in a rainstorm. There was something about watching nature unleash itself on the world that was awe-inspiring, that reached deep inside and touched some sort of primal wonder. I didn't realize I was still smiling until I caught Cav watching me with that strange look on his face again, a little surprised and a little amused, and there was something else there, too, like he was scrutinizing me, trying to figure me out. He never looked away when I caught him staring at me like that, so neither did I. I wanted to figure him out, too. Strangely, I felt myself wanting that more and more each time we spoke. Or maybe it wasn't strange at all, my reaction to him. And I felt like, in a way, he scrutinized that too. I reacted to realizing he was studying me with such intensity. Did the scan finish, by the way? He looked at me questioningly and shook his head, tapping his left ear. I realized he couldn't hear my voice at all over the sound of the rain. With a resigned laugh, I reached up to him, wrapping a hand around the back of his head to pull him closer. There was a surprise on his face, but I didn't resist, so he could hear my croaking whispers. Instead, he leaned even closer, tipping his head towards me. Did the scan finish? That's what you're worried about? Here I was thinking I was about to get some sweet nothings as we shuffled against each other in the storm. I grinned and shrugged. I can whisper sweet nothings if you prefer, but we had an assignment we were trying to complete, so... For a moment he just looked down at me with amusement. His hair, now slicked down over his left eye and clinging to his face, was sending rivulets of water down his cheek to seep into his stubble and drip from his chin. The world beyond the veil of rain faded. The air shifted. Something strange and uncertain fluttered awkwardly in my ribcage, and as if drawn into a trance, I wondered suddenly what would happen next. As if it was an unspoken assumption that whatever it would be significant somehow. Without thinking, I reached up to smooth that lock of sopping hair off his face. As soon as my fingers touched him, Cav reached up and captured my hand. I was somehow surprised that the metal prosthetic was so warm to the touch. The smile on his face was different from usual, softer somehow, though still smug and amused. The apology for touching him without asking died on my lips, and holding my gaze, Cav turned his face and pressed his mouth against my palm. Oh, that's so pretty! Astonished, I gaped up at him, half distracted by a stubbly beard scratching the edge of my hand, but mostly taken off guard by the action. This is a precursor to the sweet nothing till Il Donalo. So pretty! Yes! Oh no, is it? He shifted closer, and I still wasn't quite sure what was happening. Cav was attractive. Of course he was, quite significantly, despite the scruffy appearance. But even if I'd read some of his comments as flirting, it never seemed serious. I felt that at best he was unsure of me, at worst he didn't like me at all, and the flirting was probably just his natural way of teasing. So the strange atmosphere, the world around us faded behind the curtain of rain. I wasn't sure what it meant. No, I didn't like you at first. When out of nowhere he echoed the thought I just had about him, it somehow made me laugh, harder than I expected, too. Cav didn't seem to know what to say as my hand slipped out of his, and this time gave a lock of his hair a gentle touch. Really, I had no idea. You weren't obvious about it at all. Subtlety is definitely your strong point. Well, I wasn't trying to be subtle. I wanted you to know. Did you expect it to upset me? I wanted to see how you'd react to it, because Chileans always seem to expect everyone to love them or be in awe of them. My eyes went wide, and there was an uncomfortable flutter in my chest. Why was he saying that like, we remember what the Nostrana did. My people remember that. My breath caught in my throat. What? Before the radio, after it, those of us who are left haven't forgotten it for a single day. Oh boy. What? My chest went taut and I couldn't look at him anymore. It all made sense in an instant. His supposed lack of interest in what others saw was left behind of a lifetime, so when he'd avoided the cargo hold. The strangely antagonistic way he'd interacted with me. The tightness in my throat prevented me from saying a word, even if I'd known what to say. This was unexpected, and yet somehow I couldn't even be surprised. How were his people affected by that? How was he affected? Were Camerans long-lived? Had he seen it? How many generations back was it for him? How raw were those wounds? I wanted to know, but there was no way I could ask. I didn't feel like I even had a right to. I felt fingers under my chin as Cav tipped my face up to look at him once more. He was still smiling somehow, soft and regretful. I wanted to space a lot of it when I first saw what was in that hole. Recognized it right away, of course. But they'd have just rounded it all up again anyway, I guess. Didn't you realize who I must be before I woke up then? Why didn't you warn the others? I guess I thought that maybe you had a story that was worth listening to and that you should get the chance to tell it. Oh my goodness! Besides, what would have come of me telling them before you woke up? Not like I would have thrown you out the airlock with everything else. just trying to think about how many times I was nearly thrown away before I even woke up. Thank you for giving me a chance. I'm not quite bitter enough to throw a living person out an airlock without an introduction first, at the very least. I do appreciate that, but that's not what I meant. Cav was still leaning quite close so he could hear what I was saying, but at those words he twisted towards me and pulled away a bit so he could look in my eyes more directly. His expression was questioning, a little confused. He smiled and lifted one shoulder in a half-hearted shrug. I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't like you at first either. As a matter of fact, I did notice. Maybe I'm just a bit easy, but you won me over pretty fast. And then I started to think that maybe we're starting to get along a bit better. That's what I'm thankful for. I'm glad you gave me a chance to prove myself, annoying as it is that I have to. I can't say that that's your fault either, but mostly, I'm glad you gave me the chance to get to know you, and to let you get to know me a little. I hope that's what this means. Yeah, I guess it does. I admit you got me a little interested with all that stuff about companions and the like. I am insulted by my absolutely charming personality didn't win you over at first sight. But I suppose not everyone has a sort of refined taste that allows them to appreciate it. Maybe they need a little extra convincing, like a potential metaphysical connection across space and time and lives. I get it. Not everyone is naive enough to be won over just because someone can be charming. Rude! I'll accept the observation. We were both silent a moment. Despite that it was a little awkward now, I was glad to have had that out in the open. It explained a lot about Cat's behavior, and whether it was that whole nature thing acting up or not, I wasn't sure. Maybe it was something more than that. But the amount of relief I felt to hear his reasoning and to see that we were okay took me by surprise a little. I might need some time to untake what my impressions of Cav were, but now, as we watched the rain lessen, I couldn't help but feel the air between us had cleared a little. Maybe that was why he'd wanted to come to the surface with me in the first place. The rain had lightened to a steady drizzle by the time Cav's column crackled slightly. Noel's voice sounded over it seconds later. Noel to Cav, how's your team holding up? Oh, we're doing just fine. Got a nice little shower to cool us off. How's it where you are? The rain hit us too. Did you find some shelter? Not a great one, but we're fine. Heading back to landing, I assume? Yeah, we're on our way there, as the worst of it seems to have passed. Imagine we'll hit rendezvous in half an hour or less. You all done with the scans? I pulled the scanner towards me and checked the readings before he could respond. Looks like it finished just before we had to grab the tripod and run. Yeah, Lane says it. I heard that. Your hearing is disturbingly acute these days, Noel. I think Lane must have sent it telepathically at the same time she said it. I shrugged when Cav looked my way. It was faster. Didn't even think about the fact that might surprise them, honestly. Well, that's that. I guess we'll wrap up and head to rendezvous then. Alright, we'll see you there. And the channel went quiet again. Cav started to unfasten the scanner from the tripod so he could fold it up. You know the others are going to keep being shocked when you do things like that. I don't want to say it was habit because it wasn't, but even so, in the past I was never part of a group where I could use my natural abilities to that degree, even in the few instances my heritage had been an open secret. Cav handed me the scanner as he slung the folded tripod over his shoulder again. It's just nice to have the freedom to do it, that's all. Do you think I should be more careful? I don't think you have to be wary of our crew if that's what you're asking, but you're shooting off messages over at least 50 kilometers. You sure you want to be doing that? Who do you think is going to be nearby to listen to me tell Noel a scan is finished? It's the more complicated stuff that gets attention. The galaxy has changed in the last 5 centuries, Lane. Have you not been out here long enough, or have you seen enough to have a grasp on how? That's all I'm saying. So you were telling me to be careful for my own sake? Yeah, I guess I am. Alright, fair enough. No more slightly longer than minuscule range telepathy. I didn't think it was that big a deal. Grand scheme of things, a few kilometers was nothing, but Cap had a point, I suppose, about it having been a while. With the dreams and other things. excuse me, that had happened lately, maybe he was right to suggest caution for now. I let the subject drop and be more careful going forward. Cav and I didn't linger there longer. Climbed out of the shallow gully and started making our way back to the rendezvous where the shuttle was waiting. It was a long hike back to where we'd come from. The ground was wet, muddy, overtaken by water in some places. We had to slog through it, and it slowed the trek back, as I expected. Good thing Cav switched to boots, right? Despite that, I was getting soaked through. I somehow didn't mind it. The occasional patches of icy drizzle were nice. It had been years since I'd been in a rainstorm of any kind, even if you didn't count my years in sleep. It brought with it bittersweet nostalgia and memories of Laertes, of Mother. That was so long ago, and maybe I was the only one that remembered her now. So, I don't know if anyone has picked up on it, but Ophelia is the name of Hamlet's love interest, I guess you could say, in the play Hamlet, and Laertes is the name of her brother, so that's always just kind of tickled me. Well, and so many others who'd crossed my path back then. They were all probably forgotten. Just like the ones who once lived here were forgotten. I paused and looked back across the landscape, then bowed my head a little, just a way of saying goodbye. I might have sent a Valayan morning song, but I felt out of keeping to do it when Cav was next to me, all things considered. Even if you wouldn't feel it, I would know. So I left it at that. Beside me, Cav stopped to watch. He said nothing, but when I looked at him, his gaze was looking out across the vast, quiet landscape as well. We were both silent a moment before we turned back to the shuttle. We had almost reached it when the chill swept over me. One that wasn't caused by the cold air or faint drizzle. A buzzing sensation started at the base of my spine and crawled up towards my skull, like an electric current thrumming through the air around me and sparking into my body. Fingertips burning, I stopped where I was. Every hair on my body was standing on end, prickling with anxiety. Dun, dun, dun! My feet felt rooted to the spot. There were eyes on me, many, dark, hungry. Shit, why are they here? Why are they looking for me? Cav paused to peer at me, but before he could speak, I whirled around, holding one arm in front of him to ward off an enemy he couldn't see and I could only sense. Cav, continue to the shuttle, calmly. Don't run. Just walk very slowly. Don't look back. Lane? Cav, please, just go. I don't have time to explain. You'll do. Don't make me force you, please. Please go. There was silence from him, and unable to see what he was doing, I wasn't sure he'd leave. Utar. Common obscenity in Sunirish, Cav's native language. The closest English translation is fuck. Though there are several other similar curse words, this is considered the most extreme. For a moment it seemed like the stairs had changed, or maybe it's just because the name changed or something. I didn't understand the word he muttered, but he abruptly turned and left me there. I sagged in relief, a shaky breath escaping my body as his footsteps moved away. They came slithering in like snakes right after he left. There was a faint ripple in space, almost like the feeling of a breeze, and they were there. Slimy, shadowy tendrils that hurt to look at directly, seeing without eyes, hearing without ears, knowing where I was. They groped forward, half in this reality and half anchored to the paths. I could only watch them come towards me. I didn't have time to wonder why they'd come, but I was glad Cav left. I didn't want them to notice him, or any of the others. It was bad enough they were seeking me out. I stood still, hardly daring to breathe, as the first bit of coiled shadow touched my foot. The others followed, wriggling around me, through every part of me, scrabbling through my past and future with cold, curious fingers, ripping it all open, laying every thought and action bare, not judging. They never judged. They watched, and knew. If we were lucky, that was all they did. I tried to cut myself off from sensing where they were in my timeline and memories, because maybe if I didn't look at them, they would just go away. I couldn't fight the freezing tendrils off. I'd never been able to fight them off. I could only stand in place and let them wander through every corner of my existence until they were sated. If it was enough to sate them. It may have been only seconds, It felt like years, and the shadows faded. The cold, slimy feeling rolled away from me. Space rippled once, and they were gone as quickly as they had come. I let out a raspy, shaking sigh and fell to the ground, feeling like my lungs would collapse as my knees sank into the soggy soil. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Behind me I could hear the other team arriving, and I was so grateful their timing was good. They had come only moments earlier and interrupted that. It might have been very bad. Covering my face with shaking hands, I took several slow breaths as I tried to push away the empty panic that threatened to swallow me. It had been a long time since an encounter like that. It was then that it hit me why they'd come looking. I had sensed them, or what I thought was them, when I'd unwound my path to get out of that dimensional loop. It was strange that something that trivial would catch their attention. Usually I just let it bad for them to notice. But I'd always had a unique way of making them pay attention. So maybe it was just that. I wasn't adept enough to crawl through the tracks they left and figure out what made them come after me. They could have been filling up my timeline for days, and this was just when I finally noticed it. Time meant nothing to them anyway. Lane, are you? I let out a shuddering breath at the sound of his voice behind me. Told you to get to the shuttle. Yeah, well, I didn't listen. No kidding. That thing is gone now anyway. I didn't know if Cab had seen it or just felt it as a veil phased into this reality. It didn't matter anyway. He pulled me to my feet. The others are also here. I know. I get the feeling we shouldn't stick around. No, I definitely will be back, but even so. I held his hand tight and pulled him to the shuttle where the others were congregating already. I'll explain in more detail on the way back. And that was when it hit me. He hadn't actually asked me for an explanation. Whether it was his usual lack of curiosity or something else, I wasn't sure. For now, I just wanted to get away from this place. Resisted the urge to look over my shoulder as I fled. So you think it was the thing that happened at the dimensional loop? Had to have been. I thought I did sense something's attention on me right before the end. It must have been that. Truthfully, I've been feeling like something was off for the last few days. Not enough to alert anyone else, but enough that I've been having some uncomfortable dreams since you found me. Lots of stuff that's clearly related to residual anxiety regarding the stasis situation. But the dreams have taken a bit of a weird turn. A couple of times I thought I sensed a nearby presence. I assumed I might be tired, and I saw nothing to make me think it was more than paranoia. It's probably related to the veil. Will those things be back? If they show up again, they'll target me just like they did this time. But they aren't that diligent with sniffing out interesting things on this side. I doubt they'll make another appearance after poking into our reality once. Okay, well, there's not much use in worrying about it too much now. We'll have to take your word for it, since you're the only one with any experience with, what did you call them? Veil. That's just our name for them. I have no idea what they call themselves, if they call themselves anything. Creepy. Hopefully none of us will ever find out. I would like to know a little more, but he still seemed pretty rattled. We'll leave this here for now, and maybe just leave it off any official reports, yeah? Probably for the best. Okay, everyone head to decon. Cargo sterilization sequence is starting in 30 seconds. I was grateful for the shift in discussion, though it wasn't enough to get my mind off what happened. Everyone filed into the nearest decontamination chamber as Noel hit the panel to start the scans of the cargo area right behind us. The door slid shut, releasing a soft hiss as we were sailed in. We all went to small cubby holes, but even that spa you once visited can't compare. And started stripping off our outer clothes to place them in one of the slots to be scanned and sterilized. The others were chattering amongst themselves. I just listened as I pulled off my overshirt. That was way too much walking today. I think my legs are going to be sore as hell tomorrow. Interesting tattoo there, Asher. That's a sign you need to walk more, Asher. A nice view of Noel's tattoo as well. Weird, I thought it was just a sign I walked a lot today. Well, it will be the last time you have to do that much walking for a while. Grace detected signs of a developing civilization at one of the remaining planned stops, so we'll just be swinging by for some long-distance surveys. And then there's a compact protoplanetary disk to check on. No more landing missions. Aethys Station is our next proper stop, and space dock at Palmyra 4. I glanced over my shoulder at Noel curiously. Before I could ask anything, I caught sight of Cab, half turned away from me. He took off his prosthetics. That makes sense. His hair was drawn over one shoulder, and I caught just a glimpse of another terrible scar peeking out the top of his shirt with what I thought were cybernetics peeking through the skin. I didn't want to stare, but for a moment I couldn't help but wonder just what kind of accident I had really been through to be hurt that bad. I turned my eyes away to look at Noel. How far away is either station from the protoplanetary disk? About 4 folds. Long folds. We'll still be pretty far out in the middle of nowhere at that point. We'll fold out, then spend a day and a half cruising so Asher can rest up, and fold again. It'll take a few days to get there. Folds long enough, Asher would need a day and a half to rest. And that was after at least some time heading further in, because Noel had said the remaining stops were on the way. We really were out in the middle of nowhere, weren't we? Once we arrive at Aether, well, there's someone there you might want to meet, Lane. You may find it useful to just meet with him. Chat. You're not going to introduce her to that weirdo Volshiru, you know, are you? He's not weird. Volshiru? Really? Oh boy. Excuse me. The Volshiro. Huh. Don't usually spend time around other races. He's a bit of an oddball. I'll say it sounds like he's been there for a while if you absolutely expect to find him when we stop by. He's a long-term resident. That's so strange. There are stranger things out here than a lone Volshiro lurking around. Look at all them pretty lights. Kinda makes me want to trace them. That's true, I guess, but now I'm really curious to meet him. He's interesting, that's for sure. Anyway, he's pretty good at finding things or information or people, and given your situation, I thought you might want to talk to him. It's been a long time, so you might have information you want or people you want to find. I wasn't sure I did. None that a straightforward sure could help with anyway. It's good to know the option was there, I guess. All things considered, it might not be a bad idea to see what the underground rumblings were about Valayans at the very least. If there were any. I mean, just to test the waters and see if everyone had forgotten about them, or if wanderers really were still lurking around. You know, that sort of thing. Assuming this Volshiru had heard anything specific. I sat on the little seat in my changing area, stretching my legs out, watching lights overhead shift as the ship's computer ran its scans and decon protocols. How big is this station anyway? It's about mid-sized compared to other deep space stations. Sorry, it's still early for me, so... The habitation ring is about 12 kilometers in diameter, and the inner core is almost half that in length. The population is almost 2 million. It's about as safe as you'd expect from the wide array of travelers that pass through. I'm sure it's an exciting place, at the very least. In the past it would have been. Can't imagine deep space stations have changed that much. I'm sure you'll find a fascinating array of cultures and experiences. It's always good to stop by when we've been out here for a while. You can catch up on all the latest news, get updates on raiders and the like. And of course, supply up, fuel up, barter off hot cargo if you have acquired hot cargo out here. So raiders can sell their ill-gotten gains without question there. Sounds like a fun place. You'll find out for yourself soon enough, and after that, it'll be home. You can, Aether Station isn't where I suggest cutting ties if you decide you don't want to stay, but it's always a possibility. Might be best to wait until we reach somewhere a little more civilized, though. There was a loud beep and the hiss of air as the seals unlocked and the decon cycle finished. Everyone stood to retrieve their clothes and get dressed, though I did see a few glances cast my way when I didn't immediately answer. I idly listened to their conversations, Asher's complaints that he was tired and the others talking about getting food. Noel had been mentioning my staying or leaving more lately. I guess it wasn't weighing on just my mind. He was worrying about what I would decide to do. After all, I was technically just a temporary addition. But only technically. There was no way I could leave at either station. That's why I'm staying temporary for now. I could decide for sure later. But I wanted to change that. I still wasn't sure I'd stay permanently. So I'm torn between these two. I am watching his eyes move. Or eyes. For a while I felt a little lost. I didn't want to stay as just a temporary addition, a wanderer passing through. The enormity of what happened to me was just too overwhelming at first, and it felt too significant for me to take up where I'd left off. But now that there was some space between me and having woken up in a strange place, I realized that nothing was different, or at least very little was. The same things that troubled me then troubled me now, and life continued twisting on the same spiral. That part, even 500 years, couldn't change. Which meant this was as good a place to land as any. In fact, it was better than most, probably. I liked everyone here. I liked this crew, this ship. I felt a deeper connection to them, whether it was real or just in my head. I wanted to stay for the crew, the new bonds I was forging, and if Noel or the others were worried about my plans, maybe it was time to let them know for sure where my thoughts were heading. Save us all some uncertainty and get things settled now. Feeling someone's gaze on me as I mulled it over, I glanced over my shoulder to see Tab looking my way again. He smiled faintly as he pulled on his shirt, then motioned towards the door. I made quick work of pulling my overshirt back on as well. I was going to head down to Master grab something to eat after a shower. Same here, I smelled like old grass. Or worse. I was going to go for a hot shower too. I could use it. You going to be okay? I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. No worries about everyone. I've noticed. You wouldn't believe the increase in gray hair. Starting to know some crow's feet too, my friend. You need to learn to take it easy. Okay. Enough giving me a hard time. I'm just saying it's a shame to destroy your good looks with signs of very early aging. You could just become a silver fox, though. Some great hair might. All right, see you all in the galley in a little while. They snickered as he left. The rest of us soon followed, Noel parting ways to go to our respective quarters to clean up. Despite the attempts at levity, my head was still full of worrying thoughts while cleaning up, and I wasn't sure the memory of that encounter with the veil would go away anytime soon. Uncertainty was part of life, but I hated when it bounced up and reminded you it was right there all the time. After dinner, most of the crew ended up in the rec room, lounging around and talking. I was going through some of the many remaining data prisms and continuing to label the ones that were star charts. It's just a way to keep my thoughts from returning to that encounter with the veil. I'd already spent too much time thinking about them. I hated the way they crawled into your mind and took over thoughts, the same way they crawled through your existence if you took too much notice of them in the past. That was why I loathed looking there. They just sat there waiting so they could pounce on anyone unsuspecting and treat your life like it was a pleasant little book to read, like you were entertainment. If you weren't so lucky, they'd chew through your past, severing connections, destroying pieces, leaving gaps and holes as they devoured it bit by bit. And in the worst cases, they'd consume it all, every stitch of your existence, until not even an empty shell was left. I had been unprepared to encounter them, and it left me more shaken than I'd realized. Hence, sparing myself from work because I refused to dream about those bastards or have some other weird-ass nightmare. I'd had too many of those lately. I took a breath and set another prism in the little box, once again tearing my thoughts away from what had happened. The Ophelia was leaving the star system now, cruising past some of the outer planets and heading beyond the boundary. That was after a brief side trip, though. Courtesy of Noel had a little package to deliver to the star. We couldn't stay and watch the stasis cube be destroyed, but we kept scanners on it. I was notified the moment we lost its signal. That made me feel 2 parts elated and 1 part strangely empty. It was what I wanted, a sort of humorous revenge. But it was never that easy, was it? That was just another reason I wanted something to occupy my thoughts. In any case, the current plan was for Asher to do a late-night fold once we were clear of the star's hill sphere. That way that should get us well on the way to the next couple of stops. So for now, the video was on auto and we all had some downtime. Laren and Fraser were playing some sort of tabletop game I didn't recognize while some of the others watched. A few of us were reading or working on various things. I was in a corner alone, burying myself in the crystal and nav charts. As I picked up another one, I let out a short huff and crossed my arms over my chest. Maybe it's time to take a break and think about other things for a while. At least find another way to distract myself because this wasn't working. I hadn't realized Cav showed up until I thought I might like to join the others, or someone specific. But there he was, watching, just like he always did. I was tempted to pretend I didn't see him, but I thought he'd enjoy that even more than acknowledging him, and we couldn't have that. Curious, I got up from where I was and joined him on the other side of the room. Okay, interesting outfit. And he's got his hair braided. Nice. Gave me the usual sly grin. Coming to talk to little old me? Obviously. Got tired of burying yourself in work as a distraction? A little, yeah, but you don't have to say it like I'm desperately afraid and clinging to work to save me. Oh, that isn't what you were doing? I just wanted to think about something else for a while, so I don't dream about annoying things. He gave me a long, serious look. Bad dreams are why you keep running into my arms in the morning, then it will win. That happened once. But yes. Shouldn't be surprising there's some residual stress seeping out from my unconscious mind. Today seems like something that might trigger a few. Fall in love with Cav. I'm totally fine. I'm so glad I picked him. Fair enough. I suppose that was a silly question. It would be far more unusual if you were able to sleep peacefully at night. How are you feeling now then? Did the work distraction help? I shrugged. Do you deal with those things often? Not often per se. I have dealt with them before though. On Valea, when they're teaching you to walk the paths, you have a guide that holds them off. You can feel them watching when you're there. You don't see them and they can't touch you. So they say. The goal is that you learn to walk there solo, but as I said, I'm quite bad at it, though I can technically do it. I never got the hang of how to keep those things from noticing me, so I had to use a paths guide longer than most. I'm quite good at telepathy. My range is exceptional even far away, but the paths, not my forte. Well, we can't all be good at everything, guide or not, though I guess the drawbacks of being bad at some stuff are a little heavier than others. A shame you never learned how to avoid those things, or to fight them off. If that's a thing. Oh, it's a thing. Eventually they make you go through several trials, walking the paths alone and trying to avoid the veil, luring them to this reality and fending them off by yourself. At the very least, that part is a lesson I learned well. It was less fending them off and more just standing very still and waiting for them to leave, while my teachers watched. Then made me feel like a failure for not being better at it. They sound like shitty teachers. Maybe I was just a bad student. Teachers who blame their students for not learning well are shitty teachers. The whole point is figuring out how to teach someone. How to help them overcome their weaknesses, how to augment them with their strengths. If you can't figure out that much as a teacher, it's your fault, not the students. I gave him a long look and once again had the distinct feeling he was speaking from experience. I'm pretty sure this is the dev's experience as well. Huh. I wondered if I would ever learn enough about him to verify that theory or not. I sighed and pushed those thoughts away. Anyway, the point is I've dealt with them before, yes, but there's a reason I tend to avoid looking through the paths. I guess there are things even space wizards are bad at. All things considered, I think there are a lot of things they are very obviously bad at. Like getting along with others, figuring out that taking over the universe is rude. Basic tenets of good parenting, such as not putting your kid in a 500-year timeout. Clearly the only thing they're better at than everyone is science. If history is anything to go by, sometimes that's enough. Only for getting your way, not for being decent. If you can get your way all the time, you don't necessarily have to be decent. You'd hope that an involved race would want to be decent for the sake of it, and not just because they have to be. Guess decent isn't objective either. I think most of us can agree on certain bullet points, so... I'm sorry. I haven't had my caffeine for today. You'd think that, but here we are. Why did I come over here hoping for a pleasant distraction instead of some depressing conversation? Why do you always talk about depressing things with me? Yeah, why is that, I wonder? I literally have no idea. Well, it always starts as me giving you a hard time, but somehow you just end up not being fun to tease. Am I supposed to apologize for that? No, not being fun is in itself sometimes pretty damn fun. Yeah, that makes no sense. He laughed and glanced over my shoulders at the others, shaking his head. They'll be rowdy all night, just so you know, so if you want a relaxing conversation here, it ain't gonna happen while they're all ganging up on praise like that. Okay. Then we should go somewhere else. I wasn't sure that's what he'd been hinting at, but I kind of got the feeling. From the cockeyed grin that spread on his face and the way he immediately pretended otherwise, I figured I hit the mark. Looking to spend a little more alone time with me, didn't get your fill down on the planet? You could say that. I guess now that I know you don't hate me, I'm a little curious to get to know you more. Il Donalo, I'm an open book for you. You are the literal opposite of an open book for me, Cab, and not just because I can't read your mind. I know almost nothing about you, I hope you realize. Well, I guess I do like to keep a little mystery about myself. I'd prefer if that isn't the only reason you're looking to spend some time alone with me, though. Unraveling the mystery? It's a bonus, I suppose. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how good you are at untying complicated knots, then. Not sure what I think about you calling yourself a complicated knot, but I guess it's a little too late to complain. What do you think about heading to the galley where it's a little quieter? A nice cup of tea, a coffee for me, and the stars. Conversation where I can actually hear you for a change. It was a little loud. I suddenly paused, something dawning on me. Wasn't that cybernetic piece on his ear for his hearing? Typically, it would enhance his hearing beyond normal, not just correct it to normal levels. So why couldn't he hear me? Why hadn't he been able to hear me over the rain on the planet? If that's not for his hearing, then what even is it? There were tons of other options, but it really demonstrated how little I knew about him, didn't it? Nalo? Oh, sorry, just got distracted by something. Yes, going to the galley sounds good to me. He gave me a strange look, but didn't ask further questions. He took my arm and pulled me towards the door, casting a glance at the others. They were crowding around the table where Laren had been obliterating Frizz at their card game. Now Kato, Sim, and Laren were teaming up to obliterate him. The others were gathering to watch. Poor Frizz. While they were distracted, we managed to slip out alone. Cab's head lingered on the back of my arm for a while, even as we walked down the corridor. It felt like there had been a slight shift in our interactions, one I approved of. He still didn't want to tell me about himself. I gently prodded him for information, and he made a game of dodging my questions. But I got the feeling it really was just teasing this time, and maybe when he got tired of that game, tell me a little about his life before he joined the ship. I was nothing if not patient when I wanted to be. The evening turned out quite pleasant, even if we just had tea in the galley and a walk to the observation deck. We parted ways, and he'd even taken the time to walk me to my door. My thoughts were full of him as I changed clothes. I felt lighter. I hadn't really expected spending the evening with him to clear my head. He was such a strange person, but maybe that was why talking to him cleared my head. And now that I was calmer, I could really think about that super terror more clearly. It was so easy to get bogged down in things like the paths and the things that lurked in space and time, to feel all that burden and anxiety pressing in on you. But it really wasn't that deep. The situation with the veil had been my fault. It wasn't that I was careless during the incident with the dimensional loop, I'd only done what I needed. The issue was how complacent I'd been with my mental barriers since waking up. They diminished to almost nothing, and I convinced myself I didn't need them. I hoped that I didn't. I was wrong. I'd always be who I was, and I needed to bear that in mind, always. With barriers in place, the veil might not have found me, and if they had, they might not have been able to dig so uncomfortably deep into my path. It was just that maintaining them was a bit of a habit you had to get into, and it was easy to slip and convince yourself it would be fine. Which, of course, I'd done. That's why I hadn't spent any time rebuilding them after that long sleep. All I had to do was get myself back in the habit of repairing them each night. Though at this point they were in such a state that I should probably rebuild them from scratch. That was definitely my mistake. It was my plan to take care of that before sleep, so I didn't put it off anymore. Which is why the moment I was finished with my shower and sitting cross-legged on my bed, the universe decided to throw a spanner in the works and remind me that nothing was ever that easy. The literal story of my life. So maybe it wasn't the universe to blame this time either. It was still just me. And maybe a tiny bit the veil. I was half convinced they were back when I first shifted into the Anam without warning. The Anam is a sort of alternate or parallel space where people can connect telepathically over very long distances. It creates a pocket of reality that no one else can perceive except the telepaths who are shifting into it. But no, someone else had pulled me into it. Dun dun dun! I bristled with rage when I sensed them nearby, a dim shape a few meters away. Who are you? It wasn't my father or anyone else I would have expected. But someone I didn't recognize. I wasn't even sure they were Valayan, though they'd have to have been just as arrogant to pull this. Who are you? I can't see you clearly. You're just bright light in the dark, unguarded, strange. I thought the best of you had all. Is that supposed to be a compliment? If you didn't want to be found, then why did you take such pains to be noticed? I wasn't trying to be noticed. You're surprisingly careless for your kind. You don't know what kind I am, so do me a favor and stay the hell away from me. I shifted myself back into normal reality, almost shaking with rage. Careless? Okay, maybe I was. Oh, it's him. But who did this blurry, distorted asshole think he was? Had he just noticed me? Had he been watching me for a while? He was going to look down on me for being careless? He couldn't even find me without using the Anam. Was it possible this guy was the reason I felt like there was something lurking around? I took several deep breaths to calm myself, but they weren't working. I tried to tell myself that if he was using the Anam, it meant he didn't know who I was or where I was, and he wasn't capable of finding me otherwise, or he probably would have. Given how distorted his image was, he was far away and incapable of establishing a clearer connection to me. Right, mental barriers. If I hadn't already been convinced they needed cleaning up, now I was. My father's face would have turned blue if he had heard the string of curses I let out. I fell on my bed with a frustrated hiss. These kinds of meetups in that space weren't uncommon for a lot of the lands, or anyone who was able to access the Anam. For some, it was another way to communicate over long distances. And admittedly, not everyone who would be as irritated at a sudden call into it as I was, so whoever that was, he might not have been trying to pick a fight. But still, I'd always done my best to stay away, to keep myself out of sight. And now every weirdo out here was knocking on the door and wanting to say hello. First the veil and then this guy. Okay, that was an over-dramatization. It was only one person, but they sure picked a hell of a bad time to say hello. Could only hope my rudeness put them off trying it again later. I sat up again, rubbing away the throb of a headache that tightened across my forehead. Years ago, my mother had shown me how to hide myself from others, but my father had expanded on what she taught me, showing me how to create a proper barrier between my mind and everything else. And the techniques needed to keep that barrier strong. He taught me when I left the homeworld, when he realized I had chosen the path of the loner. It's the only thing he taught me himself. Maybe that was why I hadn't been bothering to do it anymore. There was no way to do this without thinking of him, so maybe I'd unconsciously pushed it all away and told myself I didn't need it anymore. And how it turned out I needed it as much now as I did back then. But even as I shut my eyes, trying to quiet my thoughts, I could hear his voice as a soft, soft throat went back in my mind. In the deep night that permeates the universe, our minds and souls are like a light. When we're with others, Valayans or non-Valayans, it's possible to disguise that light, to make it one star among many. But when we are alone, quiet moments, that inner light will shine like a beacon to be noticed by anyone who might be looking. It looked like there were still people around who would notice that little beacon in the dark, I guess. I practiced this damn technique every night for several years before going into stasis. I hadn't done it once since waking up here. It was far beyond the time to pick up the habit again. I staggered off my bed into the window, kneeling before it. Shutting my eyes as if in prayer, I turned my gaze inward, muttering the words my father taught me aloud as I focused my mind until the rebuilt the crumbled mental barriers. I almost fell asleep there while concentrating on what could only be termed as psychic maintenance or something. But at some point I'd done all I'd be able to do in one night, hopefully enough to have whatever spark that person thought he saw. I didn't want to deal with another encounter from them or anyone else that might be poking around out here. Exhausted, I finally crawled into bed. As I turned off the lights from the new touchpad nearby that Rafe had installed for me, I thought I wouldn't have any trouble sleeping. I was too tired for dreams at all, much less nightmares this time. I put on some soothing music to fall asleep to, just in case. I shut my eyes and was blissfully dreaming in very little time. Da-da-da, and that's it. Coming soon, Chapter 6, Shadows and Foreboding. Hooray! We got it! We did it! Just gonna stare at the CG for a bit longer. So pretty. Hooray! Okay, so that's it for today. I will be back tomorrow to play Cataclysm Classic. Thank you all for joining me and for the lovely visual novel. So I am going to go relax for a bit. Try to wake up a bit more. So everyone take care, stay cool if it's hot, stay warm if it's cold, eat food, drink water, take your meds, go to the wet box, go to the bathroom, practice self-care. And see you next time. Bye!